Every journey needs a roadmap. Well, in writing, the roadmap is called the plan. And whether you're writing a book or a script, your main character's plan is the key to writing Act 2. Your main character's plan is one of the most critical elements for you to identify in your story. It gives you a simple, clear action line for your entire story. So in all the videos so far, we've been talking about the first act of your book or movie, the first 30 minutes of a movie, or the first 100 pages or so of a 400-page book. In the first act, you introduce your hero or heroine, and that heroine has or quickly develops a desire that is focused by the inciting incident. She might have a problem or case that needs to be solved, or someone or something that she wants, or a problem that she needs to get out of pronto. Her reaction to that problem or desire or situation is to formulate a plan, even if that plan is at first kind of vague or even completely subconscious. But somewhere in there is a plan. And it's important to have your main character or one of the characters around them state that plan. I can't stress this enough. The audience or reader needs to know what the expectation is. You wouldn't want to get into someone's car without some idea of where you're going, right? It's the same with a story. Once the audience or reader knows what the plan is, they can relax and go with the story. If you don't let them know, they're going to think it's going nowhere, or you don't know where you're going, and they'll want out. You will lose them. We don't want that. The main character's plan and the corresponding plan of the antagonist will drive the action of the entire second act. So it's critical to set up the plan by the end of Act 1 or the very beginning of Act 2 at the very latest, and usually you want to do it earlier. So let's look at some examples of how plans work. Last video, I asked you what Sheriff Brody's plan is in Jaws. The inciting incident, the shark attack, focuses his desire, which is to get rid of this shark. Brody's initial plan, stated early and often, is to close the beaches. It's pretty much the first thing that he does, and that plan would have worked just fine, because we learn that sharks are territorial. They need to feed, pretty much like a virus, and if they don't have anything to feed on, they will move on to the next hunting ground. With the beaches closed, the shark would have moved on to a new hunting ground. But then we wouldn't have a movie, right? So the initial plan is always going to fail in some way, and the protagonist will have to adjust the plan. In Jaws, the town fathers pressure Brody to reopen the beaches, and he does, and death and tragedy result. Now Brody has to try a new strategy. He goes to experts to help him get rid of the shark. Meanwhile, the town fathers are trying to pretend that the killer shark has already been caught, and the conflict is on. In the Hunger Games, Katniss's plan is to survive and win the games. And that's the underlying plan through the entire story until the very final battle and that surprise twist and new plan. But the question is how to survive and win. So that vague initial plan will have to get more and more strategic. That starts with Katniss's mentors coaching her to stand out and get noticed so she can get sponsors for the game. Let's take another movie that everyone knows, Raiders of the Lost Ark. The inciting incident, call to adventure, is when the government agents show up at Indy's university wanting to hire him for a job. Remember, the inciting incident is very often a case or a job. The agents explain that Hitler has become obsessed with collecting occult artifacts from all over the world. And the Nazis are currently trying to find the lost Ark of the Covenant. And in legend, the Ark is supposed to make any army in possession of it invincible in battle. Structurally, Raiders is a MacGuffin story, as Hitchcock called it. The Ark is the MacGuffin, the object that everyone wants. And the stakes are if Hitler's minions get the Ark before Indy does, the Nazi army will be invincible. That's bad. But Indy has a plan, and he explains it in detail. He's going to go find his mentor, Ravenwood, who is an expert on the Ark, and he has an ancient Egyptian medallion which has the instructions on how to find the Ark. So after we hear this plan, we understand the overall action of the story. Indy's going to find his mentor to get the medallion, and use the medallion to get the Ark before Hitler's minions can. Now the mentor, Ravenwood, turns out to be dead, but the plan remains the same. Get the medallion and use the medallion to get the Ark. And even though there are lots of twists and fights and things blowing up along the way, that's really the basic action of the story. Are you starting to see how a clearly defined plan is your roadmap for your story? Now let's look at a psychological thriller, Silence of the Lambs. In the first act of Silence, the inciting incident call to adventure is when Clarice gets an assignment, an interesting errand from her FBI mentor. She's to interview Hannibal Lecter, an imprisoned psychopath, for a new FBI database of serial killers. But when she walks into that basement dungeon where Lecter is being kept, all he wants to do is talk about a new active serial killer, Buffalo Bill. At the same time, in the Act 1 climax, Bill kidnaps a new victim, Catherine, and that focuses Clarice's desire. She wants to save Catherine. And Lecter makes her an offer. I'll help you catch him, Clarice. So Clarice's plan and the central action of the story is to persuade Lecter to divulge Buffalo Bill's identity and location. Even if this means that she's going to have to do what her FBI mentor has warned her not to do at any cost, she's going to have to divulge deeply personal information to this psychopathic genius. Now, I strongly suspect that some of you are writing mentor-driven stories because of the movies on your lists. If you're writing a mentor-driven story, like The Matrix, The Last Samurai, Lord of the Rings Part 1, then it will be the mentor who comes up with the plan, not the main character. The overall story arc and character arc in a mentor-driven story is that the main character is pretty much just following orders for most of the story. But then, at the all is lost moment at the end of Act 2, the mentor is almost always killed, captured, or in some way taken out of the action. And that gives the main character the make or break, step up to the plate moment of having to make the final battle plan themselves and save the day. But let's see if you've got this. I want to hear some of the plans from your movie lists. It would be really useful for you to take all 10 movies on your list and identify the plans of each. That will lock this concept in for you. Just try answering these 3 questions for each movie. What does the main character want? How is she going to do it? What's standing in his or her way?